Welcome to Transform, Ignite, Disrupt, bringing you interviews and insights covering proven practical strategies to unlock your company's innovation potential. Here's your host, Stephen L. Blue.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Transform, Ignite, Disrupt. And previously, in the last podcast, we talked about all the things we were going to be doing during this podcast series. And the most important one, of course, is how to transform your company, ignite innovation, and then ultimately disrupt the marketplace. And I'm really pleased that the first one I'm going to talk about is a company called Core ID Services. And the CEO and founder is a fellow by the name of Jeff Tuomi. You'll hear about him shortly. But I first wanted to talk about, I recently interviewed him on my League of Extraordinary CEOs series. If you don't know about that, it's on the American City Business Journal. So all you have to do is Google either Stephen Blue or League of Extraordinary CEOs, and that series is on about once a month and hits about 4 million viewers and listeners. And the whole idea behind it is just like it sounds. I interview extraordinary CEOs that have done extraordinary things, either in growth or in disruption of the marketplace or in innovation, just really cool people. And I kind of get into their heads to get into their thinking so we can all understand how they are different than the garden variety CEO that sort of chugs along and keeps on keeping on. And Jeff Tuomi certainly fits that bill. He disrupted the entire market for identity theft protection. He came in, went head-to-head with LifeLock, which is a huge company compared to his, and totally disrupted the market with a new pricing model. And, of course, if he was going to do a new pricing model, he had to have a new cost model, and he had to approach the marketplace completely differently, and he turned it up on its end. I think you'll find it fascinating. I look forward to hearing any comments that you may have on it, and listen to what Jeff has to say.
Maybe we could start out, Jeff. This is not your first, the company that you own and run now is not your first venture, is it?
It is not. I mean, there's an overused term about the serial entrepreneur. I literally started I started delivering papers when I was 9. It's a funny story, and I'm going to try to make funny stories very short, but I get a kick out of telling them. I worked for, I was 9 years old, and I was delivering papers with a neighbor down the street. He was older. I think he was about, maybe 14, and I found myself doing most of the work, and then he would pay me, like $1 a week or something like that. And after his family moved away, I got to take over the route. So I didn't mind, kind of paying the price. I was an intern, paper boy. This is back when you used to put the paper in between the doors and you delivered. I had the evening, it was in Pittsburgh, and I had the evening newspaper, and then Sunday morning we would get up at 3.
That's a lot of hill climbing.
Yeah, it certainly was. And I lived in a place called Pleasant Hills. Nothing pleasant about it. But I got a little older and a little wiser and a little brother. So I basically made him do what I was doing for the other older kid until they moved. But been working ever since. I got a job right out, during high school, and then I got, my parents moved me my senior year of high school, which was not a popular thing for anybody, but it really wasn't popular for me because we moved from Pittsburgh to Atlanta, and I wanted to go to Penn State. I had my eyes were on becoming a TV weatherman. Don't ask me why, but I think I might have mentioned that to you previously. But long story short, I couldn't go to Penn State, so I went to my dad when I graduated from high school in Atlanta, and I said, Dad, since I can't go to Penn State because it's not a state school, couldn't afford it, I said, I think I'm just going to join the service. And my dad looked at me and said, I think that's a really good idea. And I looked at him and I said, did you ever watch Walter Cronkite at night? Because they got this thing going on. This is 1970, by the way. So long story short, I ended up, the gauntlet was thrown down. I ended up in the Navy. I was in boot camp and got out of the way. In boot camp, they said I scored highly on a test and that I ought to join the nuclear power program, and I did. So I signed up for the nuke power program, and after I got out of the Navy, I ended up on a fast attack nuke sub. Tough duty station was Charleston, South Carolina. So I was pretty happy about that. Got out of the service and got accepted at Georgia Tech. So finished my 4 years, got a Bachelor of Science degree at Georgia Tech, and literally, getting back to the theme of working, being entrepreneurial, literally the day after I graduated from Georgia Tech, opened a business called the People's Sunday Auto Market. And what I noticed, I was into cars a lot, and what I noticed is you could either buy cars privately or from dealers, and it wasn't a good proposition to buy from dealers back in those days. It was a better proposition because of the tax treatment to buy privately. And so I said, well, instead of driving all over town looking at cars, why don't I bring people that are in the private market, bring them all together, and so in a central location. So I rented a covered parking deck. It was a bank building in an affluent area of Atlanta, and started advertising that you could bring your car there between 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock on Sunday afternoons, pay me $10 to park it there. You had to stay with your car, and you could deal directly with the buyers. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Anyway, whether it sold or not, you had to pay the $10, and it just took off. We had the local TV stations cover it. We got the billed in the in the local newspaper, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and ended up putting about 150 to 160 cars in there every Sunday afternoon. And these are private owners, correct? Okay. And so, so they loved it. It became, pretty much like a flea market sort of deal. We, had the roach coach set up there, and we knew we hit it big when a bank, like North Georgia Bank or whatever it was, came to us and said they would like to set up the authorization for loans. And then we got hooked up with an insurance company, and we were, getting overrides on all this. And so that was the first business. And I ended up selling it to a Delta airline pilot and an air traffic controller, sold half of it. Learned my first lesson that, the more partners you have doesn't always work, especially if they don't see your way. And so I sold the rest of it to them, and went to buy a home and couldn't buy a home because I didn't have substantiated income. So got a real job. Paying $50 a week. And I was in sales for a company that actually went from $2 million to $1 billion. So call that being blessed and lucky at the same time.
Start that. Do that one again, in case the transcriber misses that. Say that whole thing again.
Yeah. So when I sold the People's Sunday Auto Market, I went and got a real, what I call a real job. It was, and they were paying me $50 a week as a salesperson. And literally after 2 months, they came to me and they said, we need to, because I was getting $50 a week plus commission. I'm sorry. I was getting commissions, and they came to me and said, we have to redo your compensation plan because you're making too much in commissions. Well, I was that company actually. It was lucky and blessed at the same time. That company went from $2 million to $1 billion. It became a Fortune 500 company. We called it the least known Fortune 500 company back in the early '80s. But it was a great experience for me. I stayed there many years, but kind of the highlights was I was kind of the young, fast rising, sort of employee, and got to sit in on board meetings, and ultimately got an exposure to doing acquisitions. So I was on the due diligence team. It was a very entrepreneurial organization. So we had literally had offices all over the world, and each office you were responsible for the P&L in that office. So in essence, they were the bank, and you got paid based on profitability. And when I was 30 years old, I like to brag about this because it was in 1980, and I literally made $164,000 when I was 30 years old in 1980 in Detroit. Yeah,
That's
did it
about $3 million today.
Yeah, so I was living the dream. They had transferred me from Atlanta to Detroit. You know, and it just on the surface, it didn't sound like the best place to get transferred to. It didn't sound like a promotion, but I turned it into. We were the last place out of 42 data centers in the country, and when I left, we were second to New York City. So I felt pretty good about myself. Went from there, got in.
Hold on, excuse me, Jeff. Hold on, stop right there now. What were the keys to doing what you just said you did?
You know, it was attitude. When I remember this very well, when I got to Detroit, it was in the doldrums. It's when all the car companies were just, I mean, you know, their backs were up against the wall, and the people, you know, it was just all about attitude. And I came from Atlanta, and I thought anything was possible. And the other thing that I understood very well was my compensation plan. And I've always hung on that. You know, if you're ever confused about what to do during the day, if you're an employee, just look at your compensation plan. And the compensation plan should give you a good hint as to what you should be doing during the day. But it was
compensation plan.
Exactly. So the drivers, you know, was the compensation plan, but it was also, you know, just a change of attitude. I came into the office, you know, everybody was down and out, and I tried to, you know, just change the culture of, you know, we're not the losers. You know, we are in last place, but you know, there's next year we're not going to be in last place, and it came true. I spent 5 years there, and like I said, it was a huge turnaround. And from there, I got a big promotion into the senior management of the company. They moved me to Charlotte, North Carolina, then back to Atlanta, and then to London, England. I was the first American that they sent over to London. We had all the usual suspect locations in Europe. I mean, Germany, Italy, France, the UK, and did what I was supposed to do there. Came back to the United States after the obligatory 2 years. And then the company had done junk bond deals with Michael Milken. And one or two worked, and then the biggest one that we did not work. And so, you know, typical, sometimes you're up and sometimes you're down. And the company got into financial trouble. And so I ended up leaving because it was time to leave. And co-founded a company that was in the online data backup business. It was called CapSure. It was CapSure. And we were on the bleeding edge of online data backup. And when 9/11 hit, the company, you know, just took off because it was, people looked at that situation, and all of a sudden, you know, they got a new sense of the loss of data, and it was we were in the right place at the right time. That company grew very quickly. We ended up selling it to a roll-up that ultimately became one of the largest companies, in that space, in the data backup, online data backup space. And then, from there, I went on to work with, actually what we did is we morphed that company into a company that did visitor management in guarded, gated communities. So instead of calling the front gate or the back gate and saying, I've got, this person or that person coming, we developed a software program where you could do that all online. And then the person would show up at the gate, and there was kind of that first level of security. Their name, the visitor name, would appear on the screen, and then our program would print a pass and give directions to the home. And that company was also ultimately sold as well. And then in the interim, I went to work for Oracle Corporation. It was a job where it was a startup for Oracle. It was in the education division. I was hired after about a I want to say it was about a 4 or 5 month process. I was the last one standing, and got hired for the job. Hired 9 region managers throughout the country, and did extremely well on the startup for Oracle. Left Oracle to put 2 tier 2 Oracle consulting firms together to take them public. I went skiing, and when I came back from skiing, the 2 owners weren't talking to each other. So that blew up, and I went with one of the tier 2 firms, and left that tier 2 firm after a few years, and ended up in the plastics business with Sam Ayoub, who was the ex-CFO of Coca Cola, and did a turnaround on a large plastics business, which was about an hour outside Atlanta. I knew nothing about plastics, but I went back to Georgia Tech and got the Research Institute involved in that process, and we ended up making what was called moldable wood. It was a big compression molding business, and we ended up making cable reels, the wooden ones. We were now making them out of a high-density polyethylene, along with a thermomechanically treated pine that we recycled out of the furniture industry up in North Carolina. And our largest customer became, it was CommScope, which they were a coax cable company. And though that business still operates today, the plant operates 24/7, 365, making cable reels, and I see them out on the highways and the byways from time to time. So that was a very proud moment. And took the money. We ended up selling it to the largest company making wooden cable reels. I remember the call. Said, we can do this the hard way or the easy way. I said, let's go with the easy way. And they bought it. They bought the company. And then I ended up in the training business, went with another private equity group that was out of Dallas, and bought it was a training business. They were actually the computer lab rental facilities, and ended up having them all over the country. Had a great run with that for several years. Largest client was SAP, and then as that market became more of a commodity, I looked at what's the infrastructure that I have? How can I recommission this infrastructure that I have? I ended up in the medical collections business. We were really a boutique firm that had surgery centers. We just focused on surgery centers. And I also did a project for Verizon. I would call that a boutique call center. Named it To Dial For. And we did well with both of those businesses, sold them, and took some time off. And then the current opportunity, which is Core ID Services, was presented to me just over a year ago, and it was a company that needed help really in the business development area. And came into it. I was hired as the CEO, and had never been involved in identity theft protection or recovery business before, but it was very similar to me in the data backup business. Because the data backup business, everybody said, what a fantastic idea, and then they would never do anything about protecting that data until they had a loss. And so I looked at identity theft protection as really the same animal. I mean, it's just different stripe, but it's the same animal. It's like, technology. Wow, this is great. I need identity theft protection, and I do nothing about it. And then I have my identity stolen, and then it's hair on fire. So that's where I am today with my current responsibilities.
Wow, I'm dizzy just listening to all that.
I know. I hate when people ask me that, because I go, at some point somebody's going to say, "Well, you just shut up." I mean, but really,
Well, I'm not the one.
Yeah, it's been, it was a long history, and I've enjoyed literally every minute of it.
Let's see if we can pick out some common themes, though. As I'm
Sure.
listening to this story, opportunistic is a common theme. Seeing something other people don't see is a common theme. Aggressive,
Right.
Clearly a common theme. Risk-taking is a common theme, right?
Yeah, and I like solving. I look at something and I say, "There's a problem, and I want to solve it." And so, that's kind of a common theme for me. I just look at businesses, and there's a problem here, and I want to solve it. And then I look at how can I take expense out of it if it's an existing business. How can I take expense, keep the quality, but if there's from a competitive standpoint, what can I take out of this and still compete, on a good footing? So that's definitely, it lends itself well to this whole identity theft, protection and recovery market. I mean, that's what that's where I'm hanging my hat as far as I think this is the best market for the opportunities that all of the things that you mentioned when you look at those common themes. I think I looked at this identity theft market and said, here's real opportunity. This is there's 33% of the market is, tied up between two companies. And we know one of the companies for sure, is LifeLock. And I look at LifeLock and I say, what would I do that would be different and still give a high quality? They give high quality service, we give high quality service, but how can I differentiate? And the first thing, I sat in a room and I said, you guys, you're drinking the Kool-Aid that if you're $1 cheaper than LifeLock that people care about, you're going to get that market. And I said that they spend $200 million a year telling people why they should do business with LifeLock, which, by the way, works out to about $200 per customer. And so and it's stunning when you're spending, by the way, they do over $600 million in revenue. So you're spending a third of your money capturing, what everybody says, what's the cost of acquisition for a customer? It's $200. And so I said, well, what would be a model that, would just literally obliterate that? And then we said, it's the B2B model. They're a B2C model. And so we chose a B2B model. So it's B2B2C. And, that demands a lower price because you're dealing in volumes. And that's what we went with. And then I took it one step further and I said, this is like the Dollar Shave Club to me. This is a market that needs disruptive pricing. It's kind of, I'll call it, I said, let's get to pricing that is not only disruptive, but it's almost in the realm of it's a stupidity test. So we ended up with a relationship with ADP, Automatic Data Processing, and we were chosen to be their provider of identity theft protection and recovery services. Servicing, we have exposure to over 622,000 of their customers, 35 million employees that they actually print checks for. I mean, it's like 1 in 7 employees in the United States get a check from ADP. So again, I go back to that really lucky and really blessed at the same time to have this relationship, on the ADP marketplace. And we priced it, a comparable product to, say, a LifeLock product they'll charge, north of $20 per month. We sell for $2.99. And then
I would call that disruptive. Yes.
Yeah, that is very disruptive. But I have to tell you, from a cost basis, this is the little secrets about identity theft. I mean, it's a technology business. I mean, you're monitoring certain, you're looking for, high risk, activity on somebody's account. I mean, you have all their information. You have name, address, you have telephone numbers, you have email addresses, you have social security numbers, you have dates of birth. And so these high risk transactions, they just jump out at you. You pretty much know, what that client, their normal life looks at. And then you've got all this other thing going on in the market with banks, are getting better, and then credit card companies are getting better. I mean, everybody in the ecosphere is getting better at, fighting identity theft. And so, there's a school of thought out there right now that says, what's the real value of, identity theft protection? So knowing that, I mean, we think everybody should have identity theft protection. So let's make it affordable, to everybody. And then we went one step further and said, look, the real important thing here is the recovery aspect. It goes back to that whole data backup thing. So when you get your identity stolen, it's a financial stressor. It causes a great deal of emotional stress. So this is what we're focusing on today, Stephen. It's the idea that what can we do for a real low cost that really delivers a tangible value. When you have identity theft protection, it's nice to get a little, flag, some little, blurb from that company that's protecting you, say, is this you? Somebody tried to open this credit card or whatever. That's very valuable. I'm not poo-pooing it at all. But I put a higher value in, because we deal with this on a daily basis when people call and say, I've had my identity stolen. And this is hair on fire. This is a lot of stress. And what we do is we provide what is known in the industry as a fully managed recovery. And what that entails is just, like it sounds, we literally take care of everything. We provide you overnight or via digital signature-ready documents, because a lot of people don't realize that this is it's a felony. And, what goes along with felony is you've got to prove it. You've got to sign affidavits that said this happened, because you're afforded, certain, I wouldn't call them luxuries, but certain breaks, because if you are a victim of this felony identity theft, you get certain breaks. And so you have to fill out affidavits. We do all of that for you. The only thing we can't do is the police report, but we do find it out in your jurisdiction. Here's the process. We'll set up an appointment between the police officer and the victim. So we've got your back, and that is I would say that we are. If we aren't the best at that, I would be surprised. We follow up with our clients, just like, if it's like you just had surgery. The next day, we're saying, okay, here's the triage that we're doing, and this is what's been done so far, and here's what you can expect. And we have, we sell that through on the ADP marketplace, but in the general public as well, 99 cents a month. It's like an insurance, but we can't call it insurance because it's not an insurance product. We call it an assurance product, and it's 99 cents a month, and that truly is a stupidity test. I mean, it will save you 60 to 80 hours of your time. That's what it takes the average person to remediate their own identity theft. So we look at all these different markets out there. If you're an employer, you want your employees to have this, because the 60 to 80 hours, it's not after hours or before hours. It's 9 to 5. And so, yeah, and that to me is the win-win, sort of thing. You're going to win. Not only are you providing this benefit for your employee, which goes back to one of my great mantras, the best thing you can do for an employee is show them how much you appreciate, them. But you get to win because you know that employee isn't going to be spending 60 to 80 hours of work time. And then if it's a W-2 breach, like say your company had a W-2 breach and you have 500 employees, well, the incidence of identity theft is going to go through the roof, and you're going to want this coverage. And for 99 cents a month, again, well, why wouldn't you do this?
Yeah, oddly enough, I'm pretty sure we use ADP, by the way.
Oh, great. I mean, and then literally, the best product there is, not the best product, not the best ADP product, but this 99 cent recovery is just, it's like, wow, okay. It literally takes care of everything and anything. And then when you look at that professional, employer, the organization like the PEOs, golly, you get a win out of that. If you're the PEO, provider, your customer, the employer, wins. The employee wins, and then you, as the employer of the PEO employees, you win. And it's still, we deal in volumes. I probably shouldn't be making this public, but we'll go below the 99 cents, on a volume basis.
Is there anything you're comfortable in saying to give the readers some sense of, how much growth you've seen since you got involved in a percent or something? I don't want you to give up company secrets. We have grown literally 100% since I got involved, and I will submit to you that we are getting ready to bust out. Our biggest issue right now is nobody knows about this pricing. That is this whole, scaling it. It's hard to scale when you're making sales calls and it's 100-person or 200-person business and your sale is only $100 a month. But I sit there in those sales meetings and I go, you know what? That's $100, and then it's the rule of 78. You add another customer and then another customer and another customer, and the model works because our attrition rate is 0, whereas LifeLock's attrition rate is north of 25%. Really?
Yes, and that's why they only have 4.4 million customers after being in business for 10 years, and I expect to be at that level within 2 years. Now, of course, it's going to be a lot.
They're not a public company, right? How do you get all this information? Because I'm always
they actually are. They are public. No, they're public. Yeah, oh, okay. They're public, and then they were just purchased by Symantec. Now who knows how Symantec will report the revenues, but they were just purchased for $2.3 billion.
Holy shit!
Four times revenue.
And all your time at the country club once that. Are you thinking about an IPO?
It's interesting because we're out seeking an investment right now to take this thing because we've got some big opportunities, and the one that we're closest, to, synergy and liking them and all that, the things that you want when you can be choosy about it. They are looking at a public, an exit strategy, going public and then figuring some exit strategy. And so I'm not ambivalent, but I'm busy doing other stuff right now. Yeah, sure. And I focused on building the business.
Yeah. Well, hey, before we wrap up, let's just take a minute on. I know you've been plowing some of your company assets and time and effort into Safe America, and your own personal time to Safe America Foundation.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there and why.
Yeah. I'll be glad to talk about Safe. I'm always glad to talk about Safe America because at the original level, we're big supporters of veterans. As I mentioned, I'm a veteran, and I can't solve the homeless nature of veterans. There's 67,500 homeless veterans, but I found out that identity theft is a big problem for
veterans. Actually, it was the number one concern of officers, and it was the number two concern of enlisted. Their number one concern was actually being pestered by collection agencies, while they're deployed. But I got involved with Safe America because of the work that they do for veterans. And so, currently when we deal with veterans, on a small scale, any veteran employee of any business that we're doing identity theft recovery services for, all veterans are free. All veterans and their families. And by the way, I do want to go back to that 99-cent thing. That includes the entire family. That's not just the employee. That includes the entire family. Yeah, well, that is a wow. But going back to veterans, we're just big. We're big veterans supporters. So I use Safe America as a vehicle. We share our profits with Safe America. And then the other thing, children's, many different problems that children deal with, but this whole human trafficking thing is something that, I've gone to Len Pagano, the CEO of Safe America, and said, we want to participate in that because it's close to home. Atlanta is the biggest center for human trafficking, and so it would be a natural for us being headquartered here to be involved in that.
Well, good for you. That's all the questions I had, Jeff, unless there's something else you think I missed or you want to point out.
No, I'm worn out.
So am I. I'm tired just listening to the story.
But I'm passionate. I'm a guy who loves getting up every morning and going to work. I mean, I'm one of these people. I'm available all the time. I don't care what time of day it is. I'm available. I love what I'm doing right now. I'm just absolutely, and that's another mantra is make sure the employees understand that the company does good things, and that's what we're doing. We're doing good things.
Yeah. Well, good for you.
You've been listening to Transform, Ignite, Disrupt. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit StephenLBlue.com.